So question number 40 says the ratio of girls to boys riding a bus is 15 to 12. Now remember, ratios can be written like this, but they can also be written as a fraction, which is really the way that we're more used to seeing them. Okay, so they're telling us the ratio of girls to boys is 15 to 14, which means which number is girls? The 15, right? It's in order. So this would be the number of girls. This would be the number of boys. So in other words, in this bus there are 15 girls riding and 12 boys. Now, if the driver drops off the same number of girls as boys at the next stop, does the ratio of boys to girls or girls to boys remain 15 to 12? So let's look at some possibilities. Let's say he drops off one girl and one boy. Well, now you've got 14 girls and 11 boys. Are those two ratios proportional? No. If I do 15 twelfths and I reduce it, 15 and 12 are both divisible by 3, which gives me 5 over 4. 14 isn't divisible by 5. I can't simplify it down to, in fact, 14 elevenths is simplified. So that doesn't work. Let's look at, what if we dropped off 2 boys and 2 girls? So then it'd be 13 to 10. Does that simplify to 5/4? No, again, there's 13 prime, 13 tenths is already simplified. If we dropped off 3 of each, then I would have 12 to 9. Now that one actually does simplify. It has a common factor of 3, but that's going to be 4/3, which is not the same thing, right? So that's not proportional. And then you could do -4, so that would give you 11 to 8. 11 to 8 is already simplified, so it's not 5/4. You could do drop off 5, which would give you 10 to 7. Already simplified, not proportional. Now, you could do every single possible example and figure out this way. But there's also a simpler way. How do I write equivalent fractions? How do I write equivalent fractions? It was one of the things you had to do on your homework. You had to find a ratio equivalent to each ratio and then write a proportion. So how did we do that? Guys, you don't need to have your Chromebooks open at this time. How do I find a ratio that it is equivalent to 15 over 12?
You can multiply.
Okay, we can multiply. I could do, times 2 times 2. Or I can divide, which is what we do when we simplify it, right? Divide by 3, divide by 3. If one boy and one girl, or if the same number of boys and girls gets off at each stop, is that a division problem? Or a multiplication problem? It's subtraction. If you subtract the same number from top and bottom, does that create an equivalent ratio? No. The only thing that makes it an equivalent ratio is multiplying or dividing by the same number. So without having to actually go through and check every single one, we can very simply say, hey, I'm not multiplying or dividing here, I am subtracting by the same thing, which means it's not going to create an equivalent ratio. All right, other questions? Other questions? Yes? Number 30. So this one says, complete the table of equivalent ratios. We have we're doing a ratio of squares to circles. So we have 2, 4, 6, and 8, and 4 is 16. Might just take a minute. Sometimes it takes a minute to catch up. Alright. No. So we have squares and circles, and it says the number of squares are 2, 4, 6, and 8. And the only thing we know about the number of circles is that when there are 4 squares, there are 16 circles, right? So really the only ratio we know is 4/16. So to write an equivalent ratio, we can either multiply or divide. Now one of the ratios I want has 8 squares, which I can get by multiplying by 2, right? If I double the amount of squares and I double the amount of circles, then I get an equivalent ratio, right? 4/16 is the same thing as 8/32, right? I can also do it by dividing, which is useful because I also need to know how many circles there are if there are 2 squares. So 4/16 is equal to 2 eighths. I can divide by 2. So I get 2 eighths. Then that leaves me with 6. Now, 4 times 1.5 is 6. But an easier thing is, if I've already found 2 8, how do I get from 2 to 6? Alright, I can multiply that times 3, which means I also am going to do 8 times 3, which gives me... So, my missing values are 8, 24, and 32, because 4/16, 2 eighths, 6 24ths, and 8/32 are all equivalent ratios, and if you want to test them, you can simplify it. 4/16 is 1/4, 2 eighths is 1/4, 6 24ths simplifies to 1/4, and 8/32 simplifies to 1/4. So all of those are equivalent ratios. All right. Any other questions? Okay, well, let's go ahead and talk about solving proportions using cross products. Now, once again, since you're allowed to use a calculator, this is going to be a pretty easy section for you. Our proportions look like this, where B and D are not equal to 0. Okay, this is the definition of any proportion. A proportion is where you have one ratio that is equal to another ratio and the denominator can't be 0. Now, the interesting thing about proportions is that they have something called a cross product. If I have 2 ratios, guys, if I have 2 ratios that are equal in value, then the product of these 2 numbers will equal the product of those 2 numbers. So A times D will equal B times C. This is true of any cross product. Let's look at some examples. So, someone still got their homework in front of them? Okay, so for the ones where you were writing where you are writing a proportion. So 21 through 24, I think I signed. So someone give me what you got for 21.
21.
Excuse me. 5 9ths equals 10 18ths. Does everyone agree that that's proportional?
Equals bless
No,
you.
I didn't get
Oh, that'd be like.
Okay, I didn't say did you get that. I said does everyone agree that that's proportional? Does 5 9ths equal 10 18ths?
Can everyone be different?
Yeah.
Good. I was just making sure.
All right. So 5 9ths equals 10 18ths because I DQ multiplied by 2 on top and bottom, and as long as you're multiplying or dividing by the same thing on top and bottom, it's a equivalent ratio. Now, cross products say that these two values multiplied together should equal these two values multiplied together, right? Yes?
It's right.
Okay.
It's right.
So let's see. So that gives us
9.
5 times 18 should equal 9 times 10. Well, let's see. 5 times 18 is 90. And 9 times 10 is? So does it work for this one?
Yeah.
Okay. This will work for any proportion. There's a pretty simple reason why. I'll show you just really quickly why it is. So let's say our proportion is 3/4. What's something that I could use as a ratio that's proportional to 3/4?
12. 9. Well, 9
9/12. Okay, which is multiplying by 3 on top and 3 on bottom, right? So instead of writing it as 9/12, I'm going to write it as 3 times 3 and
4 times 4.
4 times 3. Because remember, if it's proportional, that means you're multiplying the top number by the same thing and the bottom number by the same thing, right?
Yes.
So in this case, the one DQ picked was to multiply by 3. Okay? Now, my cross product is going to be 3 times 4 times 3.
Then 4.
And my other is going to be 4 times 3 times 3. Because if I multiply my original, does everyone agree that 3/4 equals 3/4?
Yes.
Okay. And 4 times 3 obviously equals 3 times 4, right? Well, if I'm multiplying by the same additional number, well, I'm multiplying this product by an additional 3, but I'm also multiplying this product by additional 3, which means they're still going to be the same thing, right? It doesn't matter what values you pick. Let's say I do 5/7. So something proportional to it, well, obviously 5/7 is proportional to 5/7, right? And 5 times 7 does in fact equal 7 times 5, right? So now, but obviously that's too easy. So something that's proportional to 5/7 would be 10/14 or 20/28 or 25/35. Okay, so let's do this. Let's multiply by 5. So I have 25 over 35, right? That's proportional, right? And look what I have. I have 5 times 7 times 5. And I have 7 times 5 times 5. Obviously, they're going to be equal. You're just multiplying the same numbers together, just in a different order. So this will work for every single proportion. If it's a proportion, if it's truly a proportion, then the numerator from the first fraction times the denominator of the section will be equal to the denominator of the first times the numerator of the second. It will always work. Now, why is that useful? Because if you don't know one of the values, let's say I have 3/24 equals R over 52. Now, what's R? We don't know, right? That's kind of the whole point.
It's a variable.
24 times what is 52?
Times
8.
3. 2.
What up?
Nothing real easy. It's going to be a decimal number, right? Because 24 times 2 is 48, but 24 times 3 is like 72. So it's going to be a decimal number. So the cross product is a really easy way to solve it because of cross products, I know that product, 3 times 52, is equal to that product, 24 times R, right? So I have 24 times R equals 3 times 52, right? 3 times 52 gives me 156. So I get 24R equals 156. So if I want to find out what R is, what do I need to do?
Divide 156 by
24.
Right. This is just a one-step variable equation. It's a multiplication problem. So to solve, I simply divide. Which is what? 6.5. So my R value, in order for 3/24 to equal R over 52, R would have to equal 6.5. Now, you can shortcut it even more than this, though. Okay? Because here's the thing. Let's look at another example. Let's say I have 7/84 equals 12 over H. Now, cross products tells me that 7 times H, which is 7H, right, equals 84 times 12. Everyone good so far? Know where I'm getting everything from? We're just doing a cross product, so that number times the variable equals that number times that number. You can do 84 times 12 in your calculator. 84 times 12 gives us 1,000 what? 1,008. And then, what do I need to do? Divide by 7 to find out what H is.
144.
So H equals 144. Now, I just told you though, we can kind of do a shortcut to this. If I want to find out what R is, when I first do a cross product, do I get R? No, I got 24R, which means to find out what R is, I had to divide by 24, right? When I did my cross product here, did I know what H was? No, I knew what 7H is, so that means to solve I needed to divide by 7, right? So the shortcut to this is really easy. We're going to multiply the two numbers that are across from each other, right? 3 times 52, 84 times 12. We're going to multiply those, and then we're going to divide that by the number that's across from the variable. We're doing the same thing, we're just shortcutting the step. Because what did I do here? I multiplied 3 times 52, and then I divided it by 24, right? What did I do here? I did 84 times 12,
And then divide it.
and then I divided by 7. it's going to be the same steps with every single cross product problem. You're going to multiply the two numbers that are across, and that's going to equal the number times that variable, and then you're going to have to divide by that number to find out what the variable is. So all you have to do, if I have, say, let's see,
So that's what the IXL is.
if I have t over 6 equals 96 over 16. Guys, if I have this, to solve what I would do, what do I need to multiply?
96 times 6.
I need to multiply the two numbers across from each other. So I'm going to do 6 times 96, and then divide by the number that's across from my variable. So my t value is going to equal 6 times 96 divided by 16. So 6 times 96,
576.
6 times 96 is 576, and then divided by 16 gives me 36. So t here would have to be 36. So your homework tonight is in IXL, but this is all this is. It's just proportions. All you have to do is find the missing value. So you multiply the two numbers that are across from each other and divide by the number that's across from the variable. Any questions?
No.